Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by my good friend, Rivals.com national analyst Clint Cosgrove. Like we always say, buddy, best time of the week.
Best time of the week. Let's get loud, let's get live, and let's talk some ball.
Well, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. The Den is in a fury right now because of all of the things going on. It's a good fury. It's not a bad fury. It's a good fury that's going on in the Den. We've got lots of questions. So the first thing, a couple quick hitters to begin with. Just the new staff, first of all, have to honor the preferred walk-on spots that were where kids committed as PWOs before this new staff came in.
No, they don't. They could not pick up the phone, and if they wanted to, I mean, it's new staff. It's no different than scholarships. You know, guys who had scholarships, if they hadn't signed, like new staffs will come in and they'll pull them. Now, if you're an outsider coming in trying to make inroads within the state, and you don't have a lot of in-state guys, I think it would probably be wise to keep those guys in tow. There's a reason the last staff kept them or offered them in the first place. A bunch of the guys actually had Division I offers that they passed up on to walk on, and they're free players. So, I mean, I think it would be not very smart to turn their back on those kids. And the one thing the last staff certainly did well was identify, evaluate, and develop walk-on talent from Wisconsin. And it would be wise for this staff to do the same.
Yeah, there's literally no downside, right, to honoring them.
None.
Like none. Like maybe
unless maybe
they get phased out in a year, like roster. After in the program. But like unless you're up against that 115, like I don't know why. I don't understand why they wouldn't do that. And it's also like you said, like inroads with the in-state coaches that they probably don't know as well. So because you know most of those PWOs are in-state kids.
I mean, and they had offers that they turned down. And can you imagine? If you pass on a kid who was going to walk on, you know, give his all to you for free when he had his school paid for and now can't go somewhere for their scholarship, it just wouldn't be a good look. I don't see him doing it. I know this staff, well, I don't know all of them, but they're good guys and they understand the value in the in-state players and the walk-on program as well.
For sure. All right. So next question. Do you think the Badgers are going to target another running back with the decommitment of Jaquez Keys, or do you think they're just going to stick with Nate White?
My guess would right now, unless they can flip somebody big, they would probably just stick with Nate White. I haven't had that discussion. I don't know, you know, I mean, with Braylon staying, and I don't know how deep the running back room is right now. I'd have to really take a deep dive, but you know, there's not a lot of elite running backs out there that they'd be able to get in on unless you can get in on Fletcher, who just decommitted from Ohio State. You know, if John Randall Jr., I think he likely ends up at Utah. If not, would probably be Kansas State. So I don't know if they'd be able to get in on him. The one that we had talked about would be Trey Cornist, who is from Ohio. But they didn't offer him at Cincinnati, so I don't know if they're going to offer him at Wisconsin. There's some guys, but they probably feel comfortable with Nate White, and they have guys returning that weren't necessarily going to return in the first place. If you can flip somebody, like I said, by all means, maybe they'll do it. But I have imagined they've identified some holes in the roster, and running back is really not one of them right now. So they may focus on other areas, but I wouldn't put it past them. I just, off the top of my head, I really couldn't tell you what they're going to do running back wise.
Yeah, it feels like they're definitely going after D-backs, like first and foremost. That seems to have been their point of attack. And we've seen a couple commitments recently from D-backs. One of those guys that we talked about just last week, Braden Moore, committed over the weekend, as did 3 other players since the last time we talked. So, and these are guys that are outside of the Midwest. So you've just started watching film on them more recently, but I'm excited to talk about some of these guys. So let's talk about the 3 guys who have committed this past weekend. In addition to Moore, the first one of those is going to be Christian. I want to pronounce it Alliegro. It's probably not, but I'm gonna Allegro. Allegro. I'm calling it Allegro. Allegro is fast.
It doesn't matter. He can
it means, you know what it means? In Italian, it means fast. And he, for his size, he's 6'4", 220. He plays fast. And that's what I like about him. He's got great instincts. And so he's clearly processing the game very fast. So I think the name is pretty apt so far. What do you think, Clint?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Big dude who can move. He looks like he's well coached. Length, does a little bit of everything. You have him listed as an edge. He seems more like a space player almost. If his size is what it is listed at, I could see edge being a position because he does have the ability to drop into coverage. You talk about the 3-3-5. He's a guy who could maybe line up at that outside linebacker, then dip down to defensive end. But there's a lot to like about him. I love this play right here. It's impossible to stop. You put the defensive end in a total bind. You pretend like you're blocking him, then you just slip by him for the pass. So that shows his athleticism with the ball in his hands. But you like his drop right there. Read the quarterback, react, and go make a tackle. I love this kid's motor. He appears to run very well. He flips his hips. He can play coverage. You see him running down the deep seam there. Whole lot to like about him. So when you get a guy who can play coverage, who can likely rush the passer and then can also tackle in space, you can never go wrong with that, especially if the size at which he is listed is true. You see him, trigger fast there, identify the play, come downhill and make the tackle. Just a lot to like about him. I like you said, I didn't know much about him. Just started really watching him. You are the expert on him, Perko, and any thoughts that you have?
Well, I like his versatility, like you said, because especially with this 3-3-5, like we as Badger fans, for the most part, don't know what to expect unless you've been really like eating the tape of Cincinnati. But even then, it's going to have to be adapted to the players that the Badgers have on the roster already. And so I think this is a really interesting kid, but I actually had a question for you when it comes to PG kids, right? I'm from the Northeast originally. PG, postgraduate years, kids take an extra year before they come to college. That's very common in the Northeast, especially for kids who want to go to D1 athletics. You see these prep schools, all over the place in Connecticut, and which is where he plays at Avon Old Farms, which is like one of the OG prep schools up in New England. Yep. And I think that there are actually advantages to taking prep school kids or kids who've taken PG kids in a lot of ways because they have that extra year of maturity. And I understand that a lot of people say, well, they don't necessarily have the upside if they had to go to prep school. I say if you're recruiting for the college level, I'll take that extra year of maturity and extra year of growth because they're still going to have the same 4 years of eligibility, whether they start at 18 or 19.
Yeah, no question. You're not wasting a spot on a guy who's not going to play early on most of the time. A lot of those guys did have offers. They just bet on themselves and wanted something bigger and better. Some of those guys, when coaches are coming through, they'd be like, if you were an inch taller or 0.1 faster, like we would offer you in a heartbeat. And they're like, well, I'm going to go and get that inch and that 0.1, and I'm going to go and get these scholarships. And it turns out to be the case. So there's a lot of good players in PG, and you talk about the East Coast, obviously being, the hot spot for those, but Iowa signed a D-end out of there last year who was originally from Illinois, went and did PG. There's a lot of guys who have had success going that route. I believe you don't even lose a year of college eligibility.
No, you don't. That's the beauty of it. You don't lose that eligibility.
Yeah, it's almost like you're holding yourself back. It's like recruiting a kid from Texas who's getting ready for his 21st birthday his senior year. It's like you got a grown man. I mean, there's a reason that Utah and BYU are out there beating the face into people because they've got 23-year-old fathers who are really of NFL development playing against kids and making them look like kids.
Yeah, it's funny. We had on my high school, we had a 20-year-old running back my sophomore year, and he was all-state for a reason, and then he was a D1 lacrosse player. He stayed back to play lacrosse. he got a full ride for lacrosse. And then, but we just spent the offseason playing football, just running over dudes because, he had already been shaving for a decade by the time that he was lining up to take handoffs. So the next guy, though, that I want to talk about here, over the weekend of the 4 guys that committed, I mean, we talked about more last week. I love more. I think Tucker Ashcraft, the tight end who was committed to Colorado, Coach Prime said, we're not going to honor that scholarship. Speaking of honoring deals, Coach Prime didn't want to honor the scholarship. He decommits. He comes to Wisconsin. Clint, this guy to me is an old school Y tight end, which the Badgers haven't had. Ferguson did what he could, but he's definitely he was more of an H-back when he was at his best. I see Ashcraft as a really, really good old school Y who can, get after it blocking, but he has surprisingly soft hands and is very good at the catch point.
Yeah, so when you look at Phil Longo's offense, and a lot of people probably don't realize this, there are 11 personnel, I believe, like 86% of the time, which is like top 3-4 in the nation. And part of that comes with the tempo that they play. So 11 personnel, if you have an athletic tight end that can also get down in that Y position, if you're running tempo, and I talk about this a lot, and you don't sub, so you've got that kind of hybrid guy who can actually put his hand in the dirt, but actually flex out as a receiver. The defense is not allowed to sub unless they do it really quick. They don't have to stop for you. So, this gives you flexibility. This is a guy who, if they get in their nickel dime package because, Wisconsin's going 4 wide with this guy at a tight end, all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I'm going to run the box against this. I'm going to run the ball against this light box, throw a tight end there as an extra blocker or motion him in. You can run power out of it and everything like that. That's another principle of Phil Longo's offense is people don't realize they think of pass, but their run to pass ratio is very similar. And so the reason it is like that is because they do run tempo. They control the game. They control the way the defense can sub. You see this kid, he had some blocking plays earlier. He likes to block. He can get in your face. He's strong enough, but he also shows his ability as a receiver, to get out in space, to make moves, to run by people. He's going to get some mismatches. He's definitely going to be a great blocker downfield in the run game if they do have him split out wide. There's just a lot you can do with a guy like this. I think he's a perfect fit for Longo's offense because of the versatility that he presents, that he can be a receiver, that he can be a blocker, that he can add to numbers in the run game while the opposing defense is very weak in the box because of the tempo that you're running and their inability to sub.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I like. When you talk about the mismatches, I see him as a mismatch nightmare for defenses, especially if they have to go light against, 3 wides constantly. Like you said, he's the kind of kid, especially, you get him over the middle and you can see he's got a couple, moves for a guy his size, 6'5", 235 listed. I mean, that is great size for the athleticism and sort of the smooth athleticism that he has at that size. One last commit we're going to get to, Jonas Duclona, the defensive back out of Naples, Florida. This is a kid who had been committed to Cincinnati. This staff clearly loves him, comes up to Wisconsin, commits pretty much on the spot. They've liked him for a long time. I think the one thing that stands out to me when you watch him on tape is he has great leaping ability. He's great in the air. No surprise, he was 3rd in the state in the high jump for Class 3A last year in Florida. Yeah, so, I mean, legit 6'4" high jumper, which that's pretty decent high jumping. It's not, I'm not talking about this is like elite high jumping at 6'4", but it's very good, especially for a guy his size.
It is for a guy his size.
For his size, and that's the thing, right? He's a kid that can jump out of the gym, and that athleticism can really translate at D-back.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a 5'11", 6 foot, I mean, he's listed at 6 foot. I don't know if he's 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot, 5'6", whatever it is. If you can jump 6'4", it doesn't matter if you're going up against a 6'5" receiver, you're going to be able to go up and try to get a 50-50 ball with them. Now, they might try to body you, but the one thing that I like about him on film is he gets himself in great position to make plays. Even if he's beat off the line of scrimmage, he does a great job recovering. And I think he really understands leverage. The one question I had for you is, okay, I really like the kid. What's his elite trait? And you spit out his high jump numbers. And I said, there you go. That's all I needed, because everything else I see on film, I love about him. So you add that elite trait, and you've got yourself a player. I know that this was a big priority for Wisconsin. The second they got there, they wanted him, they needed him, and you see on film why. He's got you see him in pursuit there. He can press, he can play man to man. There's a play, I don't know if we missed it already, it might be coming up, where they're in a kind of a cover 3 look where he's got to split 2 receivers in the deep field while also looking back at the quarterback and reading that. And then he goes in and makes a pick. You see him trigger and make tackles. This might be it right here. Okay. Yeah. All right. So right there, he's a deep thirds player. And that guy running is kind of the seam curl flat defender who ended up carrying that inside receiver because 2 went deep. Well, he had I don't want to say the knowledge, the instincts to see that the ball was going there, play over the top with the guy underneath and make a pick. So very instinctive. You see the speed there. You see him play at multiple techniques as well. He can shuffle out, he can line up and press, he can flip his hips. Just a lot to like about him. I haven't seen how big he is in person. That's my biggest question. But from what I see on film, you add in the elite trait of the leaping ability, and he looks like a kid who's ready to be coached up, and he's extremely aggressive. So you got to love all of that about him.
Absolutely. Well, Clint, you talk about elite traits, and the Badgers have a current Cincinnati commit of a soft verbal coming on campus this weekend. They're trying to flip. And that's Joshua Gregory, the offensive lineman from Christian Brothers in St. Louis, your old stomping grounds. Christian Brothers, definitely one of the powerhouses down there in the area. He's got an elite physical trait to me, and that is his length. He's 6'7", and he's all arms and legs, and it looks like his wingspan could be a legit 7
all arms and legs.
He's just like, he's listed 260, which,
it might be.
He's skinny.
I probably have it somewhere.
He's skinny, but oh my God, like his wingspan is out of this world.
Yeah. So let's see. Last time I saw him play was, I think, week 1. They were playing against Milton, Georgia, in Akron, Ohio. This is a kid I've been watching since he was a young kid. I'm close with Coach Pengel, the CBC head coach. They're obviously loaded. They've sent players to the NFL year after year, to Ohio State, all kinds of places year after year. Joshua, you're right. He's all arms and legs. I see him earlier this season. I'm like, did he lose weight? He looked like he was like 235 pounds, but he didn't lose weight. He just got taller. He's like a legit 6'7". He's got these long arms, huge feet, big old mitts that he can get on you. And as a guy who's growing into his body, he's just so raw. But even with his rawness, you see him bend, you see him explode off the ball. Look at that stance right there, wide base. And then he gets into a guy, and he plays with good bend, which is very hard to do when kids are that much shorter than you. And, at the high school level, he's almost one of those guys when he puts on 30 pounds and he's going up against a 6'6" DN, he's going to be better off because the guy's actually in his hemisphere and he's not, bending at the waist to get down on him. But he's twitched up. He loves the game. He's a great kid. Very athletic, and his best football is in front of him because, like I said, when you grow into your body this quick, you're developing your body control, and he has good body control right now. I mean, you see that kick slide and everything like that right there, but he's just scratching the surface. And there's a reason that when this coaching change happened, what everybody did is they went and looked at Cincinnati's commits, because everyone knows that Cincinnati is recruited well. And he's one of the guys that people started being like, let's get in on him. So Colorado, Missouri was just in his house 2 nights ago. So this isn't going to be a slam dunk now, because these are schools that didn't recruit him before. I don't know his interest, but the Coach Prime poll is pretty heavy. So you got to beat that. But he does have a great relationship with the Cincinnati staff. Wisconsin is a school that he was very interested in at one point, I remember. So I really think, it's going to come down to those relationships and then showing what Wisconsin linemen have done and what they do, and what he's going to be able to do in that offense. I think he's a great fit for Phil Longo's offense. Guys that need to be able to not only block in the run game, but also block in space for a lot of the, run and shoot concepts that they do. They need to work to the next level. And he's that type of guy. Like I said, high ceiling, great kid, great future. And there's going to be some competition, but I think they can get him in the boat.
Yeah, I'm a fan. The person the player he reminds me of, maybe most Badger fans might not know him, is Obina Easy, who started at Memphis and transferred to TCU. He was a 4-star out of high school. He was a kid. I actually saw him play here in Nashville. That he had that same length. He was drafted last year, but he had that same length and was so light on his feet because he had grown up playing soccer. He'd only played football for like 3 years before he went to college. And he just one of those, because you see the footwork and you see, even though he had giant feet, you had this great footwork, right? And I see a lot of those same traits in Gregory. So
good parenting right there.
Yeah. So
it's like they had a plan. They're like, let's get the footwork right, put him into football late, he'll dominate, go to the league.
I love it.
I'm taking notes if I have a kid.
Perfect. Well, I guess I'll have to do the same if I have a kid. So until either of us are fathers, we're going to sign off for the time being. We appreciate all you guys tuning in on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing to the BadgerBlitz YouTube page. Make sure you're following Clint on social media at @rivals_Clint. And we all make sure you're in the Badgers Den as much as you possibly can be. As exciting a time following Wisconsin football as I can remember, quite frankly, except for, the Russell Wilson year is probably the only other time that it was this in the news and engaged all the time. But as far as off seasons go, nothing's been even close. So John's breaking news all the time. Make sure you are subscribed in there daily, multiple times daily, or thousands of times daily if you are me. And we will be back next week. And until then, we will see you guys in the den.
In the den. The den's the hot spot.
It really is.